Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the latest The Doctor Will See You Now. Very much enjoying the possibility of getting to know authors a little bit better, getting to find out what are they up to with regards to their writing. And we're especially trying to have on this show the notion of authors who've got books coming out, about to come out. Again, you know, just because of the time that we're in at the minute, making sure that we can make noise about creative wonderment. Now, the problem is tonight, you must bear with me. I have enjoyed the last three authors that we've spoken to very much. However, tonight's guest...
You haven't enjoyed this one? Oh, sorry.
Tonight's guest is somebody extremely special, both to Dr. Noir and to Newcastle Noir. It is the wonderful, the magnificent Quentin Bates. Quentin, very welcome to the surgery, as it were.
Thank you. Shouldn't I be lying on a couch or something?
I think for public consumption, I think we should just doing as we are. I think
I'll
that's
stick
the
to
best.
the kitchen chair.
That's best. Yes,
okay.
yes, please do. So.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's amazing to see you. I have missed you because normally we meet at festivals. Normally, you know, we meet in the happiest of happiest places over in Iceland. The year usually is punctuated by us being able to see each other, which is always a joy. But I'm grateful that we can see each other like this, and even more excited by the fact that you're here this evening because we have a new book to talk about, and that gives me,
yes.
we do, and that gives me, I think it's dual pleasure.
Several books.
You spoilers, Ambassador. But it's the fact that, you know, you are a good friend, and I do love to see friends, you know, just being successful in what they do. So that's on the one hand, there's a new book, and on the other hand, you've written, I think, what has to be one of, I would say, my top three favourite series in contemporary crime fiction.
Wow, that's high praise.
Yeah, no, seriously. Because not only because of that amazing, you know, main protagonist that we'll talk about, but also your style of writing. I'm going to make a confession to the world now, and it's going to be a little bit embarrassing, but for as much as I love crime fiction, I don't find to sit down and read and concentrate, I don't find it easy. But your style, I don't know what it is. I don't know whether because I know it's you, or whether it's because of the way you write, but I find it so easy just to stay with the book and stay with the story. So, you know, thank you for the way that you write. The Doctor is most appreciative.
Thank you. I had no idea. I don't know what it is I'm doing right. It just happens.
Just make it happen. For anybody who's watching, who is not familiar with Quentin and his work, I'll just do a little brief introduction, because his story is the story of adventure and the kind of story that the Doctor wish she could have, but that's another story altogether. So he escaped from suburbia in the 70s, having a gap year. And as often happens, that gap year becomes something a little bit longer, but that gap year was in Iceland. And can you tell us, Quentin, that notion of staying in Iceland, why did that happen? Because a gap year, yeah, and you're going to come back. What was it that drew you to that country?
Well, it was, what kept me there was all the beer.
Really?
No, there wasn't any beer in Iceland at the time. This is, but back in the days when you could have a gap year between A levels and university, I went off to I was offered a job there for a few months and thought, yep, I'll give it a try and see what happens and, you know, widen the horizons a little bit. And after I'd been there for probably a couple of months, and I'd been working in a factory and just generally enjoying myself, my A-level results came through, and because I spent most of my time at sixth form college drinking beer, my results were pretty appalling, and there was no
Oops.
university place to go to. So I just decided to stay in Iceland. So the gap year became a gap decade.
And looking back, because with hindsight, it's an interesting perspective. Are you glad in a way that it didn't work out as you planned?
Oh yeah, very much so. I would have wasted university.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't ready to go to. I wasn't ready to do it at all. I wouldn't have enjoyed it, and I wouldn't have been successful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. While you were in Iceland, then I've read you worked at sea. Yeah.
Yeah, I worked in a net factory for a long time. I
Mm-hmm.
worked in fish factories. I worked in a shrimp plant. I worked on various trawlers, and I went to college in Iceland as well.
Had you been working at sea before you went over?
No, not at
No.
all.
So again, because the person that I know, I link you so much with that notion of fishing boats and the sea. But
Yeah, the fishing thing runs quite deep because it's my day job.
uh-huh.
So I write about fisheries and quotas and radars and trawl doors and engine powers and fish politics for my day job.
Uh-huh. But if I'd known you, if that notion that if you hadn't had that time in Iceland, would the sea have called you like it did? I just love the notion that the path you never know where it's going to lead.
Possibly, but in some other way, maybe. I don't know. It's possible. I don't know. I might have discovered mountains or forests or
Indeed.
something completely different. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a parallel universe where I did go to university and I'm now a crusty old professor.
Mm-hmm. I think you'd be a professor, but I doubt you'd be crusty. Now,
My
so
brother's a crusty old professor, by the way.
what's his specialism?
Chemistry.
Lovely. But back to you. Journalism.
Yes. I'm
From
rubbish at it.
No. I need to know, from the sea to journalism, where was the link? How did you make that transition?
There were a couple of threads that, for various reasons, it was getting a bit difficult to be at sea. So I was dipping into other things at the same time. And I'd been taking pictures for a long time anyway. I'd always had a camera in one hand. And I started sending pictures to trade magazines. And of course, you have to write a picture caption for every picture, and the captions got longer and longer until they turned into articles, and then the pictures sort of fell by the wayside. So, and that's really how it grew quite gradually. And then I was finally offered a proper job as a journalist on a trade magazine, and I'm still doing that kind of work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm still writing about quotas and new boats and radars and echo sounders and things like that, long line haulers. And
that's all still there, but no disrespect, because I know how important all that is to you, but you know that for me, your crime fiction writing is what really, for me, that is the person that I know, and I want to know why ever begin to do that. I mean, where did the light bulb go on? Did somebody suggest you should?
Where shall we go from here? Which version of the truth would you like?
The one that you would most like to give.
My dear friend and former colleague, Big V, otherwise known as Velomitrovic, top chap, was working with me on the same magazine. And Big V is a fantastic guy. He really is. He's a wonderful person. But he blagged a chance to do an MA in creative non-fiction writing at a university in, I think it was Imperial College in London, because he lived in London. And he actually got the company to pay for it, or to pay part of it at least. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's a good idea.
Mhm.
So I found something similar at a local university, and sort of went to my boss, the editor, and said, "Oh, but could I have some of this as well?" And he said, "All right, but we're not paying for it. But you can have the time off to do it, but we're not paying for it." So I went off and spent a Wednesday afternoon in a warm classroom once a week, and that turned into a crime story.
And that's all thanks to Big V.
And it's all thanks to Big V. It's all thanks to Velo. He made it happen.
I'm very grateful to him. Now, when you were on that course, did your main character, and again, for anybody, and we'll talk more about this main character, but for anybody who doesn't know about her, Gunhilda,
Gunhilda, yeah.
Gunhilda, was she there already? Was she just
No, she
waiting to
wasn't
come
there
out?
already. She appeared during towards the end of that course. She appeared. She had to write a chunk of a story as your thesis, I suppose, and she appeared in there. And what was supposed to be, I don't know, 30 or 40,000 words that you had to write, but it became a full novel. After, with a lot of changes and editing afterwards. So the version that the university got isn't the same as the version that's published.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Was she changed at all, or the version that we get, that first version, is that who you created initially?
The version you get now is what I created initially. Because when it finally found when I found an agent and then the agent found a publisher, one of the things they wanted was that they wanted to make her younger. They didn't want a middle-aged character. They wanted somebody in her 20s or something like that. So I had to rewrite it, and we compromised it so she wasn't 23, because I couldn't have written a 23-year-old character. So she went from being 45 to an indeterminate age of around 40. But now she's 7 books or whatever it is on. She's now roughly about my age, which is where she should be. She's a bit younger than me, so she must be around 50 now.
Okay, so
that was the only change that I really had to make. The character herself was, the personality was there already.
I am so glad, though, that you held out about that. I know you had to compromise a little, but I do think that importance of, I can say it, a woman of a certain age, because I am. It's lovely to have a character like that. I've always said, and we've talked before about this, she reminds me very much of the Icelandic version of Vera.
Older people are more interesting. They have experience and they've been weather beaten and they had some of the sharp edges knocked off, and they have experience and they've made mistakes and they've done stupid things. They're just generally more lively, interesting people.
Yeah, those life stories and what they bring in, then how they act, and all sorts of things like that. I wonder, would you do something for us now, though? I wonder, could you please hold up the copy of the latest?
This is the latest, yes. This is Cold Malice.
Cold Malice. Just hold that there for a minute while we savour, because it is a thing of beauty.
The cover has nothing to do with the story, by the way.
Really?
This is the lake in the centre of Reykjavik, and this is Fríkirkjan, and I think this thing is building as an art museum, and it was actually built as an ice house. I only found that out recently.
Oh,
yeah. Because before ice could be manufactured, which wasn't all that long ago, it's only a century ago that people learned how to actually make ice with machines, refrigeration technology. The lake was used to collect ice. When it froze in the winter, the ice was harvested and stored in buildings with no windows and very thick walls, so it stayed cold and the ice would last through into the summer.
Wow.
And I only found that out the other day from my daughter, who's a historian. The art gallery was built as an ice house.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It's always good to learn more. But you say that this image, it doesn't give anything away about the story. Can you say why it doesn't?
It doesn't. It's not connected with the story in particular. At one point, two of the characters walk past the lake, and that's it. That's the only connection with the Centro Rico. But the publisher chose the picture.
Okay. You weren't allowed the choice.
Well, I had a choice to an extent, because they gave me 4 or 5 pictures and said, look, which one of these do you think is best? And this is the one I felt that was most atmospheric. And fortunately, they agreed. Though we had a long argument about the title.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about that?
I don't think I had a title when I was actually working on it. It had to have something cold in it.
Yes, because
But that's their demand. They want something cold in every title. Sometimes the titles have been my titles, sometimes they've been their titles, sometimes it's been a compromise, and this one was a compromise. The previous one, Cold Breath, they were quite happy with that, didn't argue about it at all.
Thank you, because it's really interesting, for anybody who isn't writing, or the process and things like that. I always find it really interesting to find out, each author has a story to tell about, the nuts and bolts of getting that to us. So I have to say, for people who haven't got it yet, you really do need it. It is honestly, even from the prologue, all right, and what I wanted to say, this is my comment, what an impactful start to a novel. Because in the space of very few pages, we travel through time. We have 3 incidents, and I want to ask you about the 3 incidents that you chose with which to, hit us before we've even started on the story. So you started by sitting us there back in 2004, and the horrendous tsunami that happened back then. Was that the starting point when you began the creation of this novel? Did you start with that, or did that come later?
No, it was actually the next bit along that it started with. It was the incident in Sweden, in the hostel in Malmö. It started with that.
Because this is the next question then that I have for you, because we are, of course, we've seen Hilda move around a little bit and things like that, but you don't have us in Iceland at all to start with.
No, not at all. We go from Thailand to Sweden to Portugal. All in the first space of a few pages.
Exactly. This is what I mean. You have us on the move, and it's such an impactful move. So after the tsunami, we then witness what I can only talk about. It seems like body trafficking. Am I right in that?
Yes, pretty much. Well, name trafficking.
Because speak to us about that.
Shall I go back to the beginning?
Please, it's a very good place to start.
Okay, it's a tale of it's a man who's given a once in a lifetime opportunity to fake his own death and disappear and walk away. So he does.
Wow.
And then 10 years, and he lives a long and happy life in a foreign country under the sun, in a fishy job, which is my own personal territory, because that's his background as well. And then at some point he needs a name and an identity, and he needs papers. You can't live forever without proper paperwork. So this is how the papers are acquired, and how his new name, Erik Petter Talleksen, how he goes from being Ingvar Sturluson to Erik Petter Talleksen. And this is how the new name is acquired, and the paperwork and the background. So he takes somebody else, he steals somebody else's identity. or rather, he buys an identity from somebody who's stolen it from this poor guy.
Because is it not that it's not a bespoke? I didn't get the feeling that it was bespoke, but that there is somebody already doing this with those that live on the margins, those who wouldn't be missed
Yes,
if they
exactly.
disappeared.
It's the not being missed that makes the name valuable. So I don't know if this actually goes on, but I imagine it does. I'm sure it does.
You've just answered my next question, because I was going to ask you, what kind of research did you have to do to look into this sinister kind of action? But
I just made it up.
Mm.
I just made it up.
So it's come from your own sinister brain.
It's come from my own sinister mind. I thought, well, how would you go about getting a name?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer, you'd buy it from somebody who does that kind of thing. So how do they do it? Okay, then yes, a dead junkie.
And that brings me then on to my next question, because I was thinking of a year or so ago, I was able to catch Baldwin Zed's, or however you said the film, Let Me Fall.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so a film that deals very much with the drug problem in Iceland.
Yes.
And again, I just, thinking about that and how very relevant, again, you start us off with problems, before we even got into the story. It's like, these are issues, this is all bubbling around, this is going on. And I think it's an exciting and an unnerving start to a novel.
Thank you. Good.
Yeah, because we don't know where we are, and we don't know where we're going. But I think you pull us in, so it's like, we're damn sure we want to sit in on this ride and see all these threads come together. So,
and some of them don't. They don't always come together. Sometimes they do.
Which is lovely, because it's cheeky, but it's good. Now, I'm not going to do a chapter by chapter thing for people that are watching, because we've only got half an hour. I would like
and people want to read it themselves. They don't want to,
exactly.
They don't want to drop any
exactly. But I just want to drop some crumbs down along the way. One of the elements then that comes in throughout the novel is when you start your chapters. It's the weather forecast.
Yes.
Yeah, you sea dog, you. Can you tell us the choice of that? Why do that, and then why do it, and for what purpose?
Well, partly it's because the weather always plays a big part in anything that happens in Iceland, because it is such a central, not so much in Reykjavik, but certainly in the rest of the country, the weather is central, because if it gets really bad, you can't go anywhere. You're snowed in, or there are no flights, or roads get blocked and things like that. And it's not as common as it used to be, but it does happen. And this last winter was horrendous.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah.
The weather was appalling, and this appalling weather was going on as I was writing the book, as I was finishing it. And it does play a part in there, because the character is held up by weather. So
lovely.
Hence the forecast sort of fits around the weather conditions that I'm describing. And it was just before the COVID thing as well. It was like days before COVID erupted on the stage. And if I'd been writing this book 2 months later, I would have had to put COVID in there.
Yes, yes.
He would have. This all happened just before it turned into something so big.
I do love the fact then, as you say that, how fresh this is. It's like a book just before.
Yes, it's this last winter. This would have been happening in January.
Lovely.
January,
lovely.
February, something like that. Probably the first week in January, second week in January.
Okay, will you let me just delve a little deeper?
Please do.
Okay, because in the novel then, in Cold Malice, Hilda's back and her sidekick Helgi, and we see Helgi. Helgi's also been on a trip, and I felt there was an echo between the person that the point of view of the tsunami, the guy who witnesses the tsunami, and also Helgi's point of view. The idea of being encumbered by the in-laws.
Yes.
Yes, and I just wondered, because I say this invariably as the weeks have gone on, authors tend to write what they know. And I just wondered, if you and your wife had experienced the frustrations of the in-laws.
No, not really. No, my in-laws were lovely. Neither of them are with us any longer, unfortunately. But no, there were no problems on this scale at all.
But I have to say again, readers, when you get hold of Quentin's Cold Malice, despite the grimness of these, the opening pages, there is room for a chuckle with the notion of, the way that the in-laws tended to curtail people's holiday enjoyment. That's how we'll put it. The dynamic, though, moving swiftly on.
Very nicely put.
The dynamic between Gunhilda and Helgi, for anybody who's not read your books, could you talk to us a little bit about these two characters and how they work together?
Well, there are actually three characters. There's Gunnar, Eiríkur, and Helgi. And it's a little bit of a private joke as well, because Gunhildur is Gísladóttir. Her father's name would have been Gisli. And there is these old tales of these three idiots in Iceland called Gisli, Eiríkur, and Helgi. And it's a little bit of a folk tale, not so much a folk tale, but it's like a little national in joke. Gisli, Eiríkur, Helgi. These three plonkers. So when I invented the two sidekicks who appeared in the second book, Gunnar is Gísladóttir, and you've got Eiríkur and Helgi. So you've got Gísladóttir, Eiríkur, and Helgi. So this is a little in joke which wouldn't be grasped by anybody from outside anyway. But the three of them, Eiríkur has never really taken off in quite the same way, because he's a city boy and he's younger than the other two. Whereas Gunnar and Helgi are around the same sort of age, and they're both from outside town. Gunnar comes from the Westfjords and Helgi comes from the north. So they're both newcomers to Reykjavik. They're both outsiders, and they both have the same small town rural background. So they've both grown up in villages where there's one shop. And if it's not in the co-op, then you just don't need it.
It's not necessary.
What do you want? If it's not in the co-op, there's no point. You don't need it. So there's one brand of coffee, one brand of tea, things like that. One brand of salami, one type of cheese. That's it. And that's that background they would have grown up with. Whereas Eiríkur is a youngster, and he's a younger man, but he's grown up in the city, so has a very different outlook on things. And Eiríkur needs to appear later at some point when I've got a bit more of a handle on where to take him. So this one I wanted to be Helgi's story.
And as police officers, so we'll focus, because it's Gunnar and Helgi. As police officers, what is it that you like about them? Why are they good cops?
I'm not sure that they are. Yes, they are good cops. I don't know how real or accurate they are. I don't know that real police officers would behave like they do. I know some real police officers in Iceland, and these definitely aren't modelled on them at all. They're not really written as police officers. They're just written as people. They're just written as characters I think I'd get on with.
And I think, again, in what you've just said, is part of the beauty of that writing, that it is easy to connect to these characters.
Okay,
It is
thank
easy
you.
to want to know, so what next, or how have they reacted to that, or what's going on in their lives now.
But are the bad guys as easy to connect with?
Oh, they're easy to think how bad, although there's part of them that's actually quite intriguing, and it's like, you find yourself thinking, I shouldn't like this person.
Good, good.
Hmm.
Because
but
nobody should be really bad.
no, and that is so true. Which of your novels was the one where the mother and daughter were kidnapped?
Oh, Thin Ice.
Thin Ice, yeah. Okay. And the baddies in that were so sympathetic, you know?
Well, Magni was, yeah.
Yeah.
Ursu was a bit horrible, but Magni was lovely. And he got treated appallingly as well.
But you see, you give us
I felt
that
quite guilty afterwards, actually, for doing that to him.
Mhm. You give us the opportunity to like the bad guy. Which brings me then to the bad guy in here. Yeah. Ingvar. Or
Ingvar, yeah.
yeah.
But is he bad? Is he the bad guy, or is he just unfortunate? Or careless, or stupid? Oh, obviously, he's done bad things,
Mm-hmm.
and he walked out on his family.
Mm-hmm.
And his mistake was really to come back and try and find what was happening to them. So that was the bad thing, if you like. Was the mistake was to reappear. You shouldn't go back. Once you've gone, you should stay away.
You should stay away. So could we say about, your point of view, that for you, in your writing, it's not a question of, the forces of good and evil, battling out to the end of the novel, and then we'll have tidy closure.
Oh, tidy closure is boring.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, you need to have a few loose ends dangling here and there. I really don't like it when you have all the ends tied up neatly. That's just, you've got nothing to think about, nothing to concern yourself with, nothing to be to brood over, if you like. And I like to read a book where you need to have some of the ends dangling, and you need some of it to be tied up. You don't need to know everything. Some things you can make your own mind up on. So that we don't know what happened to Magni after the end of Thin Ice. I know what I think happened to him, but we don't know.
But again, a strength. There are many readers who like it all, neatly tied and dealt with.
With a pink bow, yes.
And why not? If that's,
If that's what they like, then fine.
Exactly.
I'm not the man to produce that.
To produce, yeah, exactly, that sense of.
I'd feel I was letting myself down if
Mm-hmm.
I tied everything up neatly.
Yes, it's too finished, too done.
Yeah.
You
because
give.
life isn't neat like that. Reality isn't. Yeah.
Exactly. There are people that have been in our lives that we don't know where they've gone, and we don't know what's happened, and not everything's solved. And so,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So maybe in fiction, we should get that mirroring. I've got another one question to ask about the book before I ask about other parts of your creative wonderment. At the start of the novel as well, sadly, there appears to be a suicide.
Yes.
That they have to investigate. And for that, you make reference to the art world in Iceland. And you talk about, is it the culture mafia? I think that's what
Menninga Mafia.
Yeah. Okay. How serious is it in reality that there's
Ooh, there is a cultural mafia, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I'm going to get myself into real trouble now.
Yeah, well, I won't press you further on that because I don't want you, But I thought it was really.
These books will never get filmed if I say too much.
Yeah. No. Yeah, exactly. Actually, I'd like to make a plea on YouTube. Iceland film and TV bodies, please, can you bring Guna to the TV or the big screen I don't care, but I reckon she would be
Ooh,
so.
I do.
So
I think TV.
okay. Well, he wants TV. I'm happy whatever he wants, but I think we should see this character on our TV screens because she's fabulous.
I'd really like to see it made in Iceland, in Icelandic.
Yes, please. Oh, yes. Yeah,
That would
totally,
be
totally.
that would be lovely.
Mm,
I would love to see that,
mhm.
rather than, I mean, we've had a couple of sniffs from TV and film companies, none of which has come to anything. And one of them wanted to, we talked about resetting it in Seattle or Alaska or something like that. Well, why would you buy it to do
Yeah,
that? You don't need to.
yeah,
You can do that anyway.
yeah. It is as it is. It's
Yeah, it's
beautiful
yeah.
as it is. Yeah, yeah. Now, I'm aware that we must move on a little bit, but before we do, just to round off our conversation about cold malice, so do you think the premise of this is you can never go back?
Shouldn't go back.
You shouldn't go. Not that you can't, because of
Not
course
that
he
you
does.
can't, but there are some things that need to be resisted, and
Because of the consequences.
the consequences can spiral out of control. So one shouldn't go back. You should just sit on your hands and yeah, because
Yeah.
he shouldn't have gone back. He should have just stayed happy where he was in his lovely Spanish town with his, all the rest of it, with his house and his wife and his new wife,
Yes. Yeah.
dog, house. Yeah, he should have just stayed there.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
then he wouldn't have had a story. So
Yeah. So it has to happen. But I like the moral of the tale. So, sir, not only are you a fabulous writer, but for me as well, you are one of those people that is so emblematic of the crime fiction world, and by that I mean the support that is there for others, and the fact that you and your translation work have brought us and are bringing us Icelandic authors that we really need to be reading. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have had the likes of Ragnar Jónasson, Lilja Sigurðardóttir, and now on with Solveig Pálsdóttir.
yeah, and there's Guðlaugur Arason as well, and there's one book by Einar Kárason and Sigurður Magnússon, and yeah.
Yeah, how much do you? I'm just trying to that balance between your own writing and then supporting others in their writing. The kind of pleasure that is in one aspect of that work or the other. What gives you most pleasure?
Having written is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily writing, but having written is lovely. It's difficult to say. It's two different parts of the sweet shop. Translation is interesting if it's something that really grabs you. Not everything does, because I translate technical stuff and news stuff as well, which is not always the most exciting. But something that's really grabs you is always a pleasure. I mean, the one the most recent one is this little beauty here, which is by
Betrayal.
the mighty Lilja Sigurðardóttir, and this one is great. This one is like being punched over and over again. It really is, because every few it's like being batted round the head with a brick, with each new idea and scenario and crisis that develops, but without necessarily having an over the top cliffhanger. Bang! Where did that come from? Oh, what was that? Oh, where does this woman get her ideas from? I mean, where does she spend her evenings? I mean, really. So this one is quite something.
But even in this, and I've said this to you before when we've been at events, you talk with way more relish and excitement about other people's work than you do your own. You are so generous.
I know, but it's mine stuff. By the time I finished writing, I'm sick and tired of it. I thought, I don't want to open this book again for another 5 years. Then I'll look at it again, and I might think it's, oh, well, it's not so bad after all. But at the moment, because Cold Malice didn't come easily, it was a struggle, and it was a battle. And I should have delivered the manuscript in last summer, and I had to go to my publisher on. I had to crawl over broken glass to my editor and beg for a few more days. And it really was a struggle to get that one finished.
I am glad you did. Thank you. I'm sorry for the suffering and it being torturous, but I am so glad that you did.
It's probably a good thing, actually, because it seems to be the ones I'm quite happy with aren't well received. The ones where I finish where I think, well, I've done a good job there, they don't seem to go down all that well. But the ones that I sweat blood and tears and curse and swear over are the ones that actually seem to go down well, or better.
Better. Maybe that it's in that the feeling, the emotions.
I think it's hard writing is easy reading.
Yes, yeah. That's a beautiful thing that you've said there.
Yeah.
Hard writing is easy reading.
But I didn't. It's not. I picked it up from somewhere. It's not an original.
Yeah. But it's good to bear in mind that. I like that. And you're also now then, can I ask about the translation work that you're on with at the moment?
At the moment, I've just, this one's finished. A couple of weeks ago, we finished the edits, so Betrayal is now gone. That's Lilia's book gone. So I have no more to do with that other than to tell people how great it is, because Lilia is the business. No two ways about it. Yeah. I've almost finished this one. Ooh. Which is by Solveig Paulsdottir. It's called Revrun, which means the fox.
How lovely.
And it's spooky and tortuous. It hasn't got elves in it like Lilia's books do now and again. But it's dark, and it gets to grips with some unpleasant, unpalatable facets of society in Iceland in particular. It's an interesting and quite a gripping read.
Lovely.
After that is another Lilia, which is called Cold as Hell, which I haven't read yet, because I don't normally read them until I start work on them.
Okay, all right.
Well, I'll read I won't read more than a third. I'll read enough to get the voices of the characters, or to get a feeling for the voices of the characters. But I want to know what's coming next as well, which is probably completely the opposite to the way you should do these things. So that's Fox, then Cold as Hell, and after that is a book called Shackles, which is again by Solveig Paulsdottir. This is Solveig's, I think it's her third book, but the first ones were with a different publisher, so we start with that one.
Wonderful.
The Shackles is number 3 on the translation list at the moment, soon to become number 2 because I'm almost finished with this one. And Solveig won the Drop of Blood Award in Iceland,
which is Iceland's crime fiction prize, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So she won for that book, for Shackles. She won the Drop of Blood for this year for the best crime novel of 2019.
Wonderful.
As Lilia won it in 2000 for the previous year for this one, and the year before that.
But sir, again, you're very kind about other people. I am aware of the time, and sadly, I'm going to have to draw us to a close. Before we close, could you just hold up Cold Malice again for me, please? You see, viewers, he's not very good at shouting about that. So I am going to say, please. Well, if you've read Quentin before, you'll already have that on order, and you won't be needing me to tell you this. But if you haven't, you have got a fabulous series to get into that will transport you to Iceland and, of course, some other places. But it will be a read that will envelop you Well, I can't say like nothing at all, because again, there are fabulous writers out there. But if you've not read Quentin, I want to add him to your fabulous writers pile.
You're like going to sleep in a snowdrift.
Yeah, which is heavenly. But now,
And fatal as well.
fatal, like all good crime fiction should be. Can we get hold of that now?
Yes, we can. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The paperback was published last week,
Mm-hmm.
so it should be available on paper now.
Lovely.
The ebook is out there on Kindle and Kobo,
Mm-hmm.
and there's an audible version as well.
Wonderful. Quentin Bates, it has been a pleasure having you in the surgery.
Jackie Collins, it has been a Dr. Noir. It has been a delight to lie on the virtual couch and be analysed.
And I hope that we can meet again soon, wherever that might be, because you are missed.
It's been a while since we shared cake and chips and coffee, isn't it?
It is. It is well overdue. Let's do it again soon. But for now, I'm going to wish you good night and stay safe, yeah?
Good night, and thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.